The fork hit the porcelain plate with a sharp clink that silenced the entire table. My sister's voice came next, cutting through the candlelight and the smell of rosemary chicken like a blade through silk. "Stop pretending you're successful, Emma." She didn't whisper it. She didn't soften it with a laugh or a smile. She said it the way you'd tell someone their shoe was untied, casual, factual, dismissive. Around us, the dinner party froze. My mother's hand hovered over her wine glass. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. Across from me, my brother-in-law studied his napkin as if it held the secrets of the universe. I sat very still. The heat rose to my cheeks, but I didn't move. I didn't defend myself. I didn't stand up or walk out. I just looked at her, my older sister Caroline, who had always been the golden child, the one with the corner office and the marble countertops and the vacation photos that made everyone else's lives look small. "I'm not pretending," I said quietly. She laughed. It wasn't cruel exactly. It was worse, it was pitying. "Emma, you work from a laptop in coffee shops. You don't even have an office. You're 32 years old and you're still, I don't know, playing startup." The words landed like stones in still water. I felt them sink. My mother finally spoke, her voice bright and false. "Caroline, that's enough. I'm just being honest," Caroline said, reaching for her wine. "Someone has to be. She's been doing this for 5 years. And what does she have to show for it? A website? A LinkedIn profile?" She looked at me then, and her eyes were soft, almost kind. "I'm worried about you, Em. I don't want you to waste your life chasing something that isn't real." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say that 3 days ago, I'd received an email from a journalist at Forbes that they were running a cover story on emerging tech founders under 35. That my face would be on the front of the magazine in less than a week. That the algorithm I'd built in my tiny apartment, the one she thought was a hobby, had just been valued at $47 million. But I didn't say any of that. I set down my fork. I folded my napkin. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. "I need some air," I said. No one stopped me. Outside, the night was cool and sharp. The dinner party was at my parents' house, the same house where Caroline and I had grown up, where she'd always been the one who got straight A's and scholarships and job offers before she even graduated. I walked down the driveway, past the hedges my mother had planted 20 years ago, past the mailbox with our family name still painted in neat black letters. I pulled out my phone. The email was still there, glowing in the dark. Subject: Forbes 30 under 30 feature final confirmation. Emma, we're thrilled to confirm your feature in our upcoming issue. The cover story will run on Monday, November 13th, with digital release at a.m. Est. Congratulations, this is a huge moment, and we're honored to share your story. I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone back in my pocket and looked up at the house. Through the dining room window, I could see them all still sitting there. Caroline was talking, gesturing with her hands. My mother was nodding. My father was pouring more wine. They didn't know. They had no idea. And for a moment, standing there in the cold, I felt something strange, not anger, not vindication, but a kind of quiet sadness. Because I realized that even when the magazine came out, even when the whole world saw what I'd built, Caroline would find a way to make it smaller. She would say it was luck. She would say it was timing. She would say anything except the truth. I walked back inside. I sat down at the table. I picked up my fork. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "You're right. I should be more realistic." Caroline smiled, relieved. "I'm glad you understand. I just want what's best for you." "I know," I said, and I ate my dinner in silence, while the candles flickered and the conversation moved on, and no one asked me a single question about my work, my life, or my dreams. 3 days later, I woke up to 17 missed calls. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It danced across my nightstand, vibrating against the wood in angry bursts. I reached for it with my eyes still closed, expecting spam, expecting nothing. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. My inbox was flooded. I sat up, my heart suddenly loud in my chest. The room was still dark, the sun not yet breaking through the curtains. I unlocked the phone with shaking hands. The first message was from my college roommate, sent at 5:47 a.m. "Emma, Forbes. Oh my God." The second was from a former colleague. "You're on the cover? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Then my best friend, I'm crying. I'm actually crying. You did it. I opened my email. The Forbes article had gone live at 6 a.m., exactly as promised. But it wasn't just the article, it was everywhere. Tech blogs had picked it up. Twitter was buzzing. Someone had already created a Reddit thread analyzing my algorithm. The headline stared back at me from a dozen different screens. The Quiet Revolution. How Emma Chen built a $47 million company from coffee shops, and there, beneath it, was my face. Professional, confident, smiling slightly, as if I'd always known this moment would come. I sat there in bed, holding the phone, feeling nothing and everything at once. My mother called at 6:23 a.m. I let it ring. Then my father. Then my brother. I watched their names flash across the screen, one after another, and I didn't answer. I just sat there in the silence of my apartment, in the small bedroom with a second-hand dresser and the laptop still open on my desk, and I tried to remember how to breathe. Caroline didn't call. By noon, I had over 300 messages. Investors I'd never met were congratulating me. Journalists wanted interviews. A venture capital firm in San Francisco sent a formal offer to discuss acquisition. My LinkedIn profile had been viewed 17,000 times. I made coffee. I sat by the window. I watched the street below, the same street I'd walked every day for 5 years, the same coffee shop on the corner where I'd written half my code, the same bus stop where I'd waited in the rain more times than I could count. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. At 2:15 p.m., my mother called again. This time I answered, "Emma." Her voice was breathless, almost frantic. "Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us?" "I tried," I said quietly. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, could picture her standing in the kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, her other hand probably clutching the counter. "Your father and I are so proud," she said, and her voice cracked. "We had no idea. We didn't know it was. We didn't know it was this big." "I know. Caroline feels terrible." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Of course that was what mattered now, how Caroline felt. "She wants to talk to you," my mother continued. "She's been crying all morning. She didn't mean what she said at dinner, Emma. She was just Mom." I said gently, "It's okay." "It's not okay. She was cruel. We all were. We should have listened to you. We should have, Mom." I said it firmer this time. "I'm fine. Really." Another pause. Longer this time. "Will you come to dinner tonight?" she asked. "Please. We want to celebrate." "We want to." "I can't," I said. "I have calls scheduled. Meetings. There's a lot happening right now." It wasn't entirely true. I could have moved things around, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to sit at that table again. Didn't want to see Caroline's red-rimmed eyes and hear her apologies. Didn't want my father to make a toast that pretended the last 5 years hadn't been full of doubt and dismissal. "Of course," my mother said quickly. "Of course. You're busy. We understand. Maybe this weekend?" "Maybe." We said goodbye. I set the phone down and stared at it for a long time. The truth was, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 5 years and had finally been allowed to exhale, but my lungs didn't remember how. I opened my laptop. The Forbes article was still there, glowing on the screen. I read it slowly, carefully, as if it were about someone else. Emma Chen doesn't look like a tech founder. She doesn't have the pedigree, no Stanford degree, no venture capital connections, no family money. What she has is an algorithm that's changing the way small businesses manage inventory, and a work ethic that turned coffee shop Wi-Fi into a $47 million company. I scrolled down. There were photos, me at my desk, me in a meeting, me standing in front of a whiteboard covered in equations. I looked professional. I looked successful. I looked like someone who had always believed in herself. But that wasn't the whole story. The article didn't mention the nights I'd cried in my car after another investor meeting went nowhere. It didn't mention the credit card debt, the ramen dinners, the months I couldn't afford to see a dentist. It didn't mention the family dinners where I'd sat in silence while everyone else talked about their promotions and bonuses and vacation homes. It didn't mention Caroline's voice, sharp and certain. "Stop pretending you're successful." At 4 p.m., I went for a walk. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to be somewhere that wasn't my apartment. where every surface reminded me of the years I'd spent building something no one believed in. I walked to the park 3 blocks away, the one with the old oak trees and the pond where ducks gathered in the summer. It was November now, and the trees were bare, their branches black against the gray sky. I sat on a bench and watched the water, still in dark. A woman jogged past, earbuds in, ponytail swinging. A man threw a ball for his dog. An elderly couple walked slowly, arm in arm, saying nothing. Normal life, ordinary life. I wondered if mine would ever feel ordinary again. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Caroline, can we talk, please? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and put it in my pocket. The sky was darkening when I finally walked home. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows across the pavement. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. It was quiet. It was always quiet. I made tea. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and looked at the Forbes article one more time. And then, for the first time all day, I let myself cry. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, but because I'd done it. I'd actually done it. And no one, not Caroline, not my parents, not anyone could take that away from me, even if they tried. The email arrived at 9:47 p.m., 3 days after the Forbes article went live. I almost didn't open it. My inbox had become a flood of congratulations, interview requests, and investment pitches, hundreds of messages from people who suddenly wanted a piece of what I'd built. I'd learned to skim subject lines, to delete without reading, to protect what little energy I had left. But this one was different. Subject: we need to talk about what really happened. No name, no company, just those 8 words sent from an address I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long moment, my finger hovering over the delete button. Then I opened it. Emma, you don't know me, but I know your story. Or at least, I know the version Forbes told. I also know the version they didn't tell, the one about the investor who tried to steal your algorithm 2 years ago. The one about the NDAs and the legal threats and the reason you had to rebuild everything from scratch. I was his assistant. I have the emails, all of them. If you want them, meet me at Riverside Coffee tomorrow at AM. Come alone. And my hands went cold. I read it again, then again. The words didn't change. 2 years ago, the investor, the algorithm. I hadn't thought about Marcus Hale in months. I'd spent so much energy trying to forget him, trying to bury that chapter of my life so deep that it couldn't hurt me anymore. But here it was, rising to the surface like something drowned. Marcus had been my first real investor meeting. He'd seemed perfect, successful, connected, interested in what I was building. We'd met 4 times. I'd shown him everything: my code, my projections, my vision. He'd smiled and nodded and asked all the right questions. And then, 3 weeks later, I discovered he'd filed a patent application for an algorithm nearly identical to mine. I'd confronted him. He denied it. His lawyers had sent me a cease and desist letter, claiming I'd stolen the idea from him. I had no money for lawyers, no proof except my own word. So I'd walked away. I'd deleted everything and started over, building a new version from scratch, making sure every line of code was different enough that he couldn't touch it. It had cost me a year. It had nearly broken me, but I'd survived. I'd rebuilt, and I never told anyone the full story, not my family, not my friends, not even the Forbes journalist who'd written my profile. Now someone was offering me proof. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me, lights flickering in the darkness like stars. Somewhere out there, Marcus Hale was probably reading the Forbes article, probably furious that I'd succeeded despite everything he'd done to stop me. And somewhere out there, someone named M had emails that could destroy him. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, turning the email over and over in my mind. Who was M? Why now? What did they want? At 6:00 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I made coffee. I showered. I dressed carefully, jeans, a sweater. Nothing that screamed success or fear. Just normal. Just invisible. Riverside Coffee was a small place near the waterfront. The kind of spot where freelancers camped out with laptops and the baristas knew everyone's order. I'd been there once or twice, years ago, back when I was still figuring out which coffee shops had the best Wi-Fi and the most forgiving outlet policies. I arrived at 9:55 a.m. The place was half empty, a few students, a woman with a stroller, an old man reading a newspaper. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a table near the back, facing the door. At exactly 10 o'clock a.m., a woman walked in. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She wore a gray coat and carried a leather messenger bag that looked expensive. She scanned the room, found me, and walked over without hesitation. "Emma," she said quietly. I nodded. She sat down across from me, setting the bag on the table between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked nervous, her fingers tapping against the leather. "I'm Maya," she said finally. "I worked for Marcus Hale for 3 years. I quit 6 months ago." "Why?" I asked. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because I couldn't stand watching him do to other people what he did to you." She unzipped the bag and pulled out a tablet. She turned it on, swiped through a few screens, then turned it toward me. "These are the emails," she said. "Between Marcus and his legal team. Between Marcus and the patent office. Between Marcus and the developers he hired to reverse engineer your algorithm." I stared at the screen. The first email was dated 2 years ago, 3 days after my final meeting with Marcus. Subject: Chen algorithm next steps team. Met with Emma Chen again today. She's brilliant but naive. No legal representation, no IP protection. I think we can move forward with filing. She won't have the resources to fight us. And my stomach turned. Maya swiped to the next email, then the next. There were dozens of them, cold, calculated, methodical. Plans to steal my work. Plans to bury me if I fought back. Plans to make sure I never succeeded. "Why are you showing?" The email arrived at 9:47 p.m., 3 days after the Forbes article went live. I almost didn't open it. My inbox had become a flood. Congratulations from strangers, interview requests, partnership proposals, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanting to catch up. I'd learned to skim subject lines, delete most, save a few for later. But this one made me stop. Subject: I owe you an apology. The sender: Caroline Chen. I stared at it for a long time. My finger hovered over the delete button. I could make it disappear. I could pretend I never saw it. I could let the silence stretch between us until it became permanent, until family dinners were something I attended out of obligation and nothing more. But I opened it. "Emma, I don't know how to start this. I've written this email 12 times and deleted it 11. I keep trying to find the right words, but there aren't any. There's nothing I can say that will undo what I said to you at dinner. Nothing that will take back the years I spent dismissing you, doubting you, making you feel small." I saw the Forbes article. Everyone saw it. And I realized something that made me sick to my stomach. I was jealous. I've been jealous of you for years, and I didn't even know it. Or maybe I did know it, and I just couldn't admit it. You built something real, Emma. You did it without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. You did it while I was buying a bigger house and a nicer car and convincing myself that those things meant I was winning. But you were always braver than me. You were always willing to risk everything for something you believed in, and I couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve to ask, but I needed you to know that I see you now. I see what you've done, and I'm proud of you, even if I have no right to be. Caroline, I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I thought about Caroline, about the sister I'd grown up with, the one who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and held my hand at our grandmother's funeral, the one who'd slowly, over the years, become someone I didn't recognize, someone who measured worth in titles and salaries and square footage. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who'd looked up to her, who'd wanted to be just like her. And I thought about the woman I'd become, the one who'd stopped trying to impress her, who'd stopped waiting for her approval, who'd built something extraordinary in the quiet spaces where no one was watching. I didn't reply to the email. Not that night. Instead, I opened a different file on my laptop, a document I'd started 2 years ago and never finished. It was titled Notes to Myself, and it was full of half-formed thoughts, Late night reflections, reminders I'd written during the hardest moments. One entry, dated March 14th. 2 years earlier, Caroline asked me today when I'm going to get a real job. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and changed the subject. But later, alone in my car, I cried. Not because she was right, but because I'm terrified she might be. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wasting my life on something that will never work? What if everyone is right and I'm just too stubborn to see it? I remembered that day. I remembered sitting in the parking lot outside my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel, feeling like I was drowning. Another entry dated July 2nd. 1 year earlier, investor meeting today. They said my idea was interesting but not scalable. They said I should consider pivoting. They said a lot of things that basically meant no, I'm running out of money. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of reasons to keep going. But I can't stop. I don't know how to stop. I scrolled through the entries, dozens of them. Each one a small monument to doubt and fear and stubborn, irrational hope. And then I found the last one, dated 3 weeks ago. I got the email from Forbes today. They want to feature me. They want to put me on the cover. I keep reading it over and over, waiting for it to disappear, waiting for someone to tell me it's a mistake. But it's real. It's actually real. And I don't know how to feel. I thought this moment would be pure joy. But mostly I just feel tired. Like I've been running uphill for so long that I forgot what it feels like to stand still. I closed the document. I made more tea. I stood by the window and looked out at the city, the lights, the buildings, the endless sprawl of other people's lives happening in parallel to mine. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. A text from my father. Your mother wants to know if you're free for lunch tomorrow. Just the three of us. No pressure. I typed back. I'll check my schedule. Another buzz. My best friend. Drinks this weekend? I want to hear everything. Yes. Saturday? Perfect. And then, finally, another message. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Hi Emma, this is Rachel Kim from TechCrunch. We'd love to do a deeper profile on your journey, the real story behind the Forbes piece. Would you be open to a conversation? I stared at it. The real story. The one that wasn't just about algorithms and valuations and success. The one that included the doubt, the fear, the family dinners where I'd felt invisible. I typed, I'd be interested. Let's talk next week. At midnight, I finally opened Caroline's email again. I hit reply. I stared at the blank space where my response should go. I could write something gracious. I could accept her apology, tell her it was okay, smooth everything over the way we'd always done in our family, pretend the hurt never happened, move forward, keep the peace. Or I could tell the truth. I started typing. Caroline, thank you for your email. I appreciate you taking the time to write it. I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. Maybe I will be someday. But right now, I need space. I need time to process everything, not just what you said at dinner, but all the years before that. All the moments when I needed support and got doubt instead. All the times I tried to share my dreams and was met with skepticism. I don't think you were just jealous. I think you genuinely didn't believe in me. And that hurt more than you know. I'm not saying this to punish you. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that an apology, even a sincere one, doesn't erase the impact of years of being made to feel like I wasn't enough. I hope we can rebuild our relationship someday, but it's going to take time, and it's going to require more than words. Emma, I read it 3 times. Then I hit send before I could change my mind. The email disappeared into the void. I closed the laptop. I turned off the lights. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, not anger, not sadness, but a strange, quiet sense of clarity. I had spent so long trying to prove myself to people who didn't believe in me. And now, finally, I didn't need to anymore. The world had seen what I'd built. The recognition had come. The validation had arrived. But the most important thing, the thing I was only just beginning to understand, was that I had believed in myself. Even when no one else did. Even when it was terrifying, even when it felt impossible. And that was the real victory. Not the Forbes cover, not the $47 million, not the apology from my sister, but the fact that I had kept going. The call came at 7:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, 6 days after the Forbes article broke the internet. I was making coffee when my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, but with a San Francisco area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. I'd been letting most calls go to voicemail lately, overwhelmed by the sudden avalanche of attention. But something made me answer. Emma Chan? The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is David Park. I'm calling from Meridian Capital. We're a venture capital firm based, and I know who you are, I said quietly. Everyone in tech knew Meridian Capital. They'd backed some of the biggest success stories of the last decade, companies that had started in garages and were now worth billions. Good, David said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Then you know we don't make calls like this often. We've been following your work for the past year, Emma, long before Forbes, and we'd like to talk to you about acquisition. My hand tightened around the phone. Acquisition? We have a client, I can't name them yet, who's very interested in your algorithm. They're prepared to make a serious offer. We're talking 9 figures, Emma. Life-changing money. 9 figures. Over $100 million. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table, the coffee forgotten. I'm listening, I said. We'd like to fly you out to San Francisco next week. First class, obviously. We'll put you up at the Ritz-Carlton, cover all expenses. Just come talk to us. No pressure. No obligations, just a conversation. I closed my eyes. A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. I would have been on that plane before he finished a sentence, desperate for validation, desperate to prove that I wasn't wasting my life. But now, sitting in my small apartment with the Forbes magazine on my counter and 17,000 unread emails in my inbox, I felt something different. Hesitation. Can I think about it? I asked. There was a pause. Of course. Take your time. But Emma, opportunities like this don't come around often. I'd hate for you to miss it. I understand. I'll send you the details. We'll talk soon. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. 9 figures. I could pay off every debt. I could buy my parents a house. I could never worry about money again. I could prove to everyone, to Caroline, to every investor who'd rejected me, to every person who'd ever doubted me, that I'd won. But I'd also be giving up the company I'd built, the algorithm I'd created, the thing that had consumed 5 years of my life. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the Forbes article again and scrolled down to a quote they'd highlighted in bold. I didn't build this to get rich. I built it because I saw a problem that needed solving, and no one else was solving it. The money is nice, but it was never the point. I'd said that during the interview, and I'd meant it. But now, faced with an actual 9-figure offer, I wondered if I still believed it. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Lunch today? Please? I typed back. Okay. Noon? Perfect. Your father and I will be there. Just your father and I. Not Caroline. Not my brother. Just them. I arrived at the restaurant at 11:55 a.m., a small Italian place downtown, the kind with red checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. My parents were already there, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. My mother stood up when she saw me. She hugged me tightly, longer than usual. Thank you for coming, she whispered. We sat down. For a moment, no one spoke. My father cleared his throat, adjusted his napkin, looked at my mother. We owe you an apology, he said finally, a real one. I waited. We didn't support you, my mother said, her voice shaking slightly. For 5 years you were building something incredible, and we treated it like a hobby, like something you'd grow out of. We compared you to Caroline constantly, and that wasn't fair. It was never fair. My father nodded. You were always the brave one, Emma. Even when you were little, you were the one who tried new things, who took risks, who didn't care what anyone thought. And instead of celebrating that, we tried to make you more like your sister, more safe, more conventional. We were scared, my mother added. We were scared you'd fail, and we'd have to watch you get hurt. But we were wrong. You didn't fail. You succeeded in ways we never imagined. I looked at them, really looked at them. My father with his graying hair and tired eyes. My mother with her hands clasped tightly on the table, her wedding ring catching the light. They looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. I needed you to believe in me, I said quietly. Not after Forbes, not after the world saw what I'd done. Before, when it was hard, when I was scared. That's when I needed you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I know. And we failed you. We can't take that back. But we want to do better. We want to be the parents you deserved all along, The waiter came. We ordered. The conversation shifted slowly, carefully to safer topics. My father asked about the algorithm, genuinely curious for the first time. My mother asked about the interviews, the attention, how I was handling it all. I answered honestly. I told them about the overwhelm, the exhaustion, the strange loneliness of sudden success. I told them about the acquisition offer. 9 figures? My father repeated, his eyes wide. That's what they said. Are you going to take it? I shook my head slowly. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks I'd be crazy not to. But another part of me feels like I'd be giving up too soon. Like there's more I want to build. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever you decide, we'll support you. Really support you this time. I squeezed her hand. Thank you. We finished lunch. We hugged goodbye. And as I walked back to my apartment, I felt something shift, not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of it. The first small crack in the wall I'd built around myself. That evening, Caroline called. I stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before I answered. Emma, she said, and her voice was raw. Did you get my email? I did. And did you read your response? I sent it 3 days ago, Caroline. Silence. Then, I deserved that. Everything you said, I deserved it. I didn't argue. I've been thinking a lot, she continued, about why I said what I said, about why I've been so awful to you. And I think it's because you scare me. I scare you? You're not afraid of failing. You never have been. And I've spent my whole life terrified of it. So I played it safe. I did everything right, the right school, the right job, the right husband. And I convinced myself that was success. But watching you risk everything and actually succeed, it made me realize that I've never really risked anything. I've never been brave. Her voice cracked. You're everything I wish I could be, Emma. And instead of celebrating you, I tried to make you small so I wouldn't have to feel so small myself. I sat down on my couch, the phone pressed to my ear. I don't need you to forgive me, Caroline said. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better, Caroline. I said softly. Yeah, I don't want to lose you, but I can't go back to the way things were. I can't sit at family dinners and pretend you didn't hurt me. I can't make myself smaller to make you comfortable. I know. I wouldn't want you to. So if we're going to rebuild this, it has to be different. It has to be real. I want that, she said. I really want that. We talked for another hour. It wasn't easy. There were long pauses, uncomfortable truths, moments when I wanted to hang up. But we stayed on the line. We kept talking. And by the end, something had shifted between us, not fixed, but softer. Not healed, but beginning to heal. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. I pulled up David Park's email with the acquisition details. I read through it carefully, the terms, the timeline, the 9-figure number that still made my breath catch. Then I opened a new email and started typing. David, thank you for the offer. I'm honored that Meridian Capital sees value in what I've built. However, after careful consideration, I've decided not to pursue acquisition at this time. I'm not ready to give up my company. There's still too much I want to build, too much potential I want to explore. I appreciate your time and interest. Perhaps we can revisit this conversation in the future. Best regards, Emma Chen. I read it twice. Then I hit send. The email disappeared. And I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not triumph, but a deep, unshakable certainty. I had built something extraordinary, and I wasn't done yet. 3 months later, I stood in front of 200 people at a tech conference in Austin, Texas. The auditorium was packed: investors, founders, journalists, students. The kind of crowd that used to terrify me. The kind of room where I used to feel like an imposter, like someone who'd wandered in by accident and would be discovered any moment. But today, I felt different. 5 years ago, I said into the microphone, my voice steady. I was working out of coffee shops because I couldn't afford an office. I was maxing out credit cards to keep my servers running, and my family thought I was wasting my life. A ripple of recognition moved through the audience. Some nodded, some smiled knowingly. At a family dinner, my sister told me to stop pretending I was successful. And you know what? She wasn't entirely wrong. I wasn't successful yet, I was just stubborn. I was just too naive to know when to quit. Laughter, warm and understanding. But here's what I learned. There's a difference between pretending and believing. Pretending is fragile, it collapses the moment someone challenges it. But believing is what keeps you going when everyone else has given up on you. When you've given up on yourself, I paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Young founders in hoodies, women in blazers taking notes. People who looked exactly like I had 5 years ago, hopeful and terrified in equal measure. 3 months ago, I turned down a 9-figure acquisition offer, I said. A lot of people thought I was crazy. Maybe I am, but I realized something important. I didn't build this company to prove anyone wrong. I built it because I believed in the problem I was solving. And that belief, that stubborn, irrational belief, is worth more than any exit strategy. The applause started before I finished. It built slowly, then filled the room, not polite conference applause, but something real, something that felt like recognition. I stepped off the stage 20 minutes later, my hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. A line of people waited to talk to me, founders wanting advice, investors wanting meetings, students wanting to know how I'd done it. I talked to each of them. I listened to their stories. I saw myself in their eyes, the hope, the fear, the desperate need to believe that what they were building mattered. A young woman, maybe 23, waited until everyone else had left. She approached hesitantly. I just wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. I've been working on my startup for 2 years. My parents think I'm wasting my time. They want me to get a real job, and sometimes I think they're right. But hearing you speak, it reminded me why I started. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the doubt, the stubborn determination that was the only thing keeping her going. What are you building? I asked. She told me. It was brilliant, a platform for connecting rural healthcare providers with specialists in urban areas. Simple, necessary, exactly the kind of thing that could change lives. Don't quit, I said. Not because I'm telling you it'll definitely work out, but because you'll regret it if you don't try. And regret is heavier than failure. She nodded, her eyes bright. Thank you. I watched her walk away, and I felt something shift in my chest, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with valuations or Forbes covers or proving anyone wrong. This was why I turned down the acquisition. Not because I didn't want the money, but because I wanted to build something that mattered, something that would outlast me. That evening, I had dinner with my parents and Caroline at a restaurant overlooking the Austin skyline. It was the first time we'd all been together since the Forbes article, since the apologies, since everything had changed. Caroline arrived first. She hugged me, a real hug, not the stiff, obligatory kind we'd exchanged for years. You were incredible today, she said. I watched the live stream. Emma, you were amazing. Thank you. My parents arrived moments later. My mother kissed my cheek. My father squeezed my shoulder. We sat down at a table by the window, the city lights spreading out below us like stars. I'm proud of you, my father said simply. Not because of the success, because of who you've become. My mother nodded. You've taught us something, Emma, about courage, about believing in yourself even when no one else does. Caroline looked down at her wine glass. I've been thinking about what you said, about taking risks, about being brave. She paused. I'm leaving my job. I stared at her. What? I've been miserable for years. I just couldn't admit it. I was too scared to walk away from the security, the salary, the title. But watching you, it made me realize I've been living someone else's version of success, not my own. What will you do? My mother asked, her voice tight with worry. Caroline smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen on her face in years. I'm going back to school. I'm getting my master's in education. I want to teach. Teaching? My father repeated, surprised. It's what I wanted to do before I convinced myself I needed to make 6 figures and have a corner office. It's what I've always wanted. I reached across the table and took her hand. That's incredible, Caroline. She squeezed my fingers. I learned it from you. We talked through dinner, really talked. The way we used to when we were younger, before careers and competition and comparison had gotten in the way. We laughed. We told stories. We made plans to visit each other more often, to stop letting months pass between phone calls. And for the first time in years, it felt like family. After dinner, I walked back to my hotel alone. The Austin night was warm, the streets alive with music and laughter. I stopped on a bridge overlooking the river and pulled out my phone. I had 17 new emails, 3 voicemails, dozens of LinkedIn messages, but I ignored all of them. Instead, I opened my notes app and scrolled back to that document, notes to myself, the one I'd kept for 5 years. I added a new entry. Today I spoke to 200 people about failure and belief and stubborn hope. And I realized something. The Forbes cover didn't change my life. The acquisition offer didn't change my life. What changed my life was deciding to believe in myself before anyone else did. Caroline is leaving her job to become a teacher. My parents are learning to support dreams instead of fear them. And I'm building something that matters, not because it made me rich or famous, but because it solves a problem I care about. 5 years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop, broke and scared and convinced I was wasting my life. Today, I'm standing on a bridge in Austin, watching the river flow, and I finally understand what success actually means. It's not the moment everyone else sees you, it's the moment you see yourself. I closed the app. I looked out at the water, dark and endless, reflecting the lights of the city. My phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. "Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for finally seeing it." Another text, this time from the young woman I'd met after my talk. "I'm not quitting. Thank you for believing in me. I believe in you because you remind me of me. Keep going." I put the phone away. I stood there for a long time, listening to the city, feeling the warm wind on my face. Somewhere in San Francisco, David Park was probably closing another 9-figure deal. Somewhere in my hometown, Marcus Hale was probably still bitter that I'd succeeded despite him. Somewhere in the world, another young founder was sitting in a coffee shop, broke and scared and wondering if they were wasting their life. And I hoped deeply, fiercely hoped that they would keep going. That they would believe in themselves before anyone else did. That they would build something extraordinary in the quiet spaces where no one was watching. Because that's where all the best things begin. In the silence. In the doubt. In the stubborn, irrational belief that what you're building matters. I walked back to my hotel. I climbed into bed. And for the first time in 5 years, I slept deeply, dreamlessly, without the weight of needing to prove anything to anyone. I had already proven it. To the only person who mattered, myself.